So I was chatting with a pastor friend the other day. She's a connections pastor here in Kansas City, and she told me about this woman that she had met a couple months ago. Let's call her Tanya. So Tanya visited their church for the first time, and she was sitting alone, and she seemed like she was going to try to sneak out unnoticed. And then my friend caught her and introduced herself. And Tanya explained how she had lost her husband right before the pandemic and how she's been in isolation really ever since. And she's been watching the services online for a while now, but she's been feeling very lonely. So she finally decided to come check it out in person. So my friend asked if they could grab coffee, and while Tanya was really hesitant, she said yeah, and she ended up providing her contact information, and they were able to get something scheduled. And Tanya did show up for coffee, and they had a great meeting, but she hasn't been back to church since. And as we were talking, I must have shown some nonverbal cues of my disappointment, maybe even failure, when she told me this, because she then asked, Tyler, what's wrong? And so I shared, I was just hoping for a happy ending. Maybe Tanya ended up coming every week and finding community and all that good stuff. But my friend nodded understandingly, and then she said something profound. She said, Tyler, we've failed this woman for over a year and a half, and she sat alone, mourning her husband and scared for her own life through COVID. For a year and a half, she's been a part of our church online without any connection from us. But now I have her phone number. I can call her regularly. I can send her text messages and check in, and I can continue to invite her to in-person worship. See, she's still engaged with us online, and even though I'd love to see her back here in person, I can't look at this as a failure. No, she is more comfortable in her online community. This conversation stuck with me, and it got my head spinning. I couldn't help but think of Tanya's situation because it wasn't unique. Most of you who have been meeting or at one point did meet online likely have plenty of people just like this. They become very regular attendees in your online services with very real, very big reasons, but they've yet to show up in person. But most of you haven't had the chance to shake their hand, to take them out to coffee, or to hear their story. And I'm going to say something that might be unpopular, but I believe it's true. You may not get the chance to do those things. You see, these people may not have any intention of showing up in person in one of our services. They may not even live anywhere near you. So what are you doing to connect with those people? And how are you creating community and pursuing those who are worshiping with you online? And then on the flip side, as your church has opened back up, I'm guessing you found yourself in the same position as 75% of the churches that I've talked to, with a whole lot of brand new people. And maybe that's got you thinking or even stressing out a bit. How are you going to reconnect with your pre-COVID congregation without forgetting to be welcoming and intentional with all of your first-time guests? In case we haven't met, I'm Tyler Smith, and guest follow-up is something that I have been passionate about for a really, really long time. And that's why I've dedicated the better part of my professional life to founding and running Texan Church. But today, I want to expand our definition of guest follow-up. I want to challenge you to create consistency and cohesion for all of your guests, whether they're interacting online or in person. And that's what we're going to dive into today. 4 ways to create a consistent guest follow-up process. But before we dive in, I just want to let you know about something fun that we're going to be doing at the end of this session. We're going to be giving away something incredibly valuable and near and dear to my heart. So make sure that you stick around to the end of this session to hear all of the details and be entered to win. Okay, so let's start unpacking this. The first way to create consistency in your guest follow-up process, whether in person or online, is to get totally and completely obsessed with your guest. I can't stress enough how essential it is for your church to have an underlying passion, to exist for the unchurched. That's the reason we open our doors each Sunday. It's why we stream our services online, to reach the lost and the lonely, to point others to Jesus. And while I think we can all stand in agreement with that statement, when it comes to living it out tangibly and intentionally at one of our worship experiences, it can get really hard. So let's talk specifically about what this looks like. First, let's talk about in-person guests. The best way I can describe it is this. When a first-time guest comes to church, leaving their house should be the hardest part. You see, once they pull into your parking lot, there should be a trail of breadcrumbs showing them exactly where to go and what to do next. They've done the hard part, and they've broken their previous pattern of not going to church. They've left the spilled breakfast, the piled laundry, the comfort of their own home, and they've showed up. And once they pull into the parking lot, it's our turn to show up for them. And I'm sure you probably have greeters ready to go every Sunday morning, and maybe even coffee and donuts in the foyer, but I hope you have plenty of signage around, both outside and inside, so that people find parking spots, the main entry, the restrooms, the nursery. And I know there are plenty of kind and welcoming people at your church who can point the guests in all those places. However, we have found requiring guests to come forward and ask for help in that way, it just puts them in a vulnerable position. You might have just rolled your eyes at me there. Vulnerable? To ask where the bathrooms are? Come on, Tyler, I know, I hear you. But let me put it this way. Having signage sends the clear message to new people that your church is expecting them, even hoping for them. It says this is a place where not everyone here has attended their whole lives and they can navigate the building with their eyes closed. And I understand every church wants new people, but people who have never been to church or who have been away from the church for any amount of time, you see, they have real doubts about their place here. And many of the church leaders that I work with have found the more they over-communicate to their guests, the more significant the impact. Things that we may think are over the top or completely obvious are greatly appreciated by guests. So consider all of the things, the places, the people that first-time guests come into contact with before the service even begins. And then make sure there is someone or something that acknowledges them. Okay, now let's talk about how to be guest-obsessed with your online guests. Connecting with the unchurched through your website and through your live stream is an incredible opportunity and responsibility. This doesn't mean that your church website has to be expensive or custom made by a developer, or that you have to be streaming on 17 different platforms. However, there are crucial components that must appear on your church's website and two critical pieces that you must have as a part of your live stream if you want to engage with your first-time guests. For your website, you must have service times and location, imagery for your church, and I don't just mean the building, and a plan of visit feature. And for your live stream, you have to have a chat option and a digital connection card. Now, this may feel like a lot, but I promise each of these things are worth it when making your online guest feel that they were obsessed over. So for service times and location, it's simple. People need to know when and where to go, and they shouldn't have to search long for that information. It needs to be highly visible on the homepage of your website. Our culture is so used to getting information within a matter of seconds. So whether this is a good thing or not, it's just the truth. And so we're impatient people. And we don't give websites more than 5 seconds to load and to show us the information that we're looking for before we just move on. So the same is true for a church website. So if your people have to work to figure out where you're located or how to access your live stream or what time your services start, they're going to become frustrated and not cared for. And although that isn't the message that we intend to send to first-time guests, it is the message that they receive. And if things as simple as service times and location aren't right there on the front page, do you think the guests are going to feel like you're anxiously awaiting their arrival? If the homepage doesn't scream, "You're welcome here, we want to have you," then the implied message is unfortunately the opposite. Every time you share this basic information about your church, it's an opportunity to do outreach, to reach out a digital hand and say, "Hey, join us." It doesn't have to be over the top or cheesy. Each church has its own flavor, and that's good, but it does need to be there, loud and clear. Now, the second component is having authentic imagery on your website. If someone went to your site and it was all text, I'm pretty sure they would leave immediately. That's just not how we take in information anymore. Your website must also serve to reflect the look and feel of your church. And a lot of church websites now have videos on them, and I think that's great. Pictures tell a story, and they help people to get a feel for who you are as a church. And people want to manage their expectations before they arrive. So do your best to show people what a worship service looks and feels like. And make sure your website is an authentic representation of your church community. Free stock photos, they're a thing of the past. And people can spot inconsistencies between your website and reality in a flash. So snap a few pictures during, before, and after service and upload those to your website. Raw, candid photos are exactly what people want to see. And these images will ultimately answer their question, will I belong here? The final part of your website is creating a connection point using the plan a visit feature. Every day, people in your community are visiting your website. They're curious about attending and worshiping with you. And adding a plan a visit feature to your website allows you to collect contact information from your website visitors and then ultimately fill in the gap between people who want to visit your church and getting them to actually show up. You do this with a combination of a digital connection card and follow-up messages to help them overcome any fears or uncertainties that they may have about visiting your church for the very first time. So again, your website needs these 3 components: the service times and locations, candid and authentic images of your church, and the third is plan a visit feature to capture contact info from your website visitors. Now, let's talk through being guest obsessed about your live stream attendees. Here, there are 2 critical pieces that you must have to engage with them in meaningful ways. And what you want to remember here is that it's all about connecting with people. If they're going to worship with you online, you're not going to run into them before or after service out in the foyer. So the first thing you need to do is to present an opportunity for them to leave and to provide their contact information. So I promise we'll dive deeper into this in just a minute, but you need to have a digital connection card that can be accessed via chat, from texting a keyword or scanning a QR code, and then share these options throughout your live stream and ask your online attendees often to connect with you. Think of it this way. It's not about having a connection cards or collecting information. It's about starting and building relationships. And the second component for online services is having a chat feature. Honestly, people can get way more interactive in a chat than they do on a Sunday morning, so embrace it. Make sure you have staff or a couple key volunteers there to answer questions, provide contact card links, respond back to introductions or hellos, and mediate any comments, even the inappropriate or unnecessary ones. Because with these components for your live stream and your website, your team will have everything it needs to live out this guest-obsessed mentality for both your online and in-person interactions, and ultimately provide consistent and relevant follow-up to all of your guests. Now, the second step to create consistency in your follow-up plan is what I've already referred to: master your Connect cards and your call to action. So consider this: 100% of the time, we fail to adequately follow up with a first-time guest if we don't gather their contact information. Now, this seems obvious, right? But how many times have you met someone on a Sunday morning or said hi back to them in the chat and then panicked later because you didn't ask for their information right away, or you felt it would have been awkward? So you repeated their name over and over, trying to remember it so that you could look them up on Facebook later and connect in that way. But you can't seem to find them on Facebook, or at least you don't think you can, but you found that one guy who kind of sort of looks like them. Maybe it could be. Yikes, I know, I've been there, and it's not how you want to approach this. It doesn't have to be this hard though. Connection cards have been used in the church space for, well, forever. And now with both in-person and online services, the expansion of Connect cards is more important than ever before. However, before I dive into the 3 most popular used connection card formats, a word of caution: look, don't ask for too much information. Remember, these are first-time guests. We don't need their physical address or their children's names or their church history or even their blood type. Okay, hopefully none of you are asking for that, but you get my point. You wouldn't propose marriage on the very first date with someone. So pump the brakes. You don't need to know everything about them yet. You just need the information to stay in touch with them. So I recommend gathering their name, their phone number, and their email address. Now, let's dive into the 3 effective formats for Connect cards. First is a paper Connect card. This is the old faithful right here. If you're talking about your in-person guest, if you've been in the church space for any amount of time, you likely know what a paper Connect card is. These can be placed in the seat backs or in the bulletins. They can be part of a check-in and as guests drop off their children, or at a welcome center. But the important thing about paper Connect cards is having a good method for collecting them. You may want to have paper Connect cards in as many places as possible, but make sure you have a designated spot so staff and volunteers can pick them up and then track that information. You can call these whatever you want: a welcome card, a get to know you card, or a Connect card, and then you can brand them to match your church. There are great templates for these, as well as plenty of free platforms where you can design your own. I love Canva. And the second format is a digital connection card. A digital connection card is a newer concept, but churches absolutely love it because it allows churches to offer their Connect card on a device, like a tablet or a smartphone or a website. Remember just a bit ago when I was talking about the plan a visit feature? You see, a digital connection card is your answer for that tool. It gathers their information so that they can plan their visit. But that's not all. You can use your digital connection card on a tablet at your welcome center, or even on a tablet at an outreach event. And you can also have these installed on a web page where your first-time guests from your online service can go and they can leave their contact information. Think of it as your virtual welcome center. All right, the last format is text to connect. And if I had to pick a favorite, this would definitely be it. Text to connect is where you can text a keyword to a phone number and then receive a text message back with a link to the digital connection card. It's the same concept that you've been doing to enter any of our giveaways throughout the Engage conference. You've texted a keyword to a number and then we sent you back a text with a link to the connection card. And this is exactly what so many churches are doing on Sunday mornings. They're gathering guest contact information via text. And people can text in, fill out the information on their phones right there from their seats or from their couches. And the churches that we work with have a system to collect all of this information that's gathered by these digital connection cards and immediately plugs those people in to 6 weeks worth of follow-up. And thousands of churches across the country are seeing massive success with this exact process. Okay, you're probably asking which one is the best or which one should my church use? Honestly, I would say you should use all of them. Even if one option is more effective than the others, people will prefer one of them and you need to have that option available for them. However, if you don't master your call to action when it comes to these connection cards, it won't matter which ones you offer because no one will actually fill them out. So you need to be sure to tell them why. Something I hear from pastors all the time about connection cards is people just won't fill them out. Well, maybe they text in, but they don't take the next step to fill out the card, or perhaps they put their name on the paper connection card and then they just leave it, but they don't leave any of their actual contact information. There will be those instances, and I know it's super frustrating, but for those people, it just takes time for them to trust you enough to leave their information. So for churches that struggle with this, I try to help them troubleshoot. I ask if they have Connect cards offered in multiple formats, and yep, they mostly do. Okay, and then I ask if they introduce the connection cards during their welcome speech, and yep, they mostly do that too. So then I ask if they tell the people why they want their contact information. And that is the one that usually gets them. Usually that is a no. This is a common problem, and it can be a huge ask of your guests to give their phone number or their email address if they've just come into your church for the very first time. They don't know why you want their phone number or their email. And so you've got to give them some context around why you want this information from them. Otherwise, they're going to create the context for themselves, and then they worry what you're actually going to do. You're going to spam them or call them every single day forever. If they've never been a part of a church, they don't know how this works. So don't let your guests wonder why, tell them why, and even how often you'll be reaching out to them. Providing this clarity will lead to a higher completion rate in your connection cards, I promise. All right, are y'all still with me? We're covering a lot today, so let's keep moving here. We've talked about being guest obsessed and mastering our Connect cards with different types and adding the why to our call to action. But the third way to create a consistent guest follow-up plan is to, in fact, have a plan. Now, maybe this should go without saying, but I think this is probably the most important part. So we need to really flesh this out together. So just as an aside, tomorrow is our implementation day, and we're gonna dive deep into these strategies to make sure that you wrap up this week with a follow-up plan that you're ready to put into action at your church. So if you don't yet have your VIP All Access Pass to get access to implementation day tomorrow, then click the orange button below so you can get yours right now. All right. So when it comes to guest follow-up plan, this is something that Texan Church has spent years learning from thousands and thousands of other church leaders. We've tested, we've reiterated, and now we have an incredible done-for-you plan all ready to go. You see, the pandemic forced us to reframe some of the processes that our previous follow-up plan had included. And the live stream isn't going away. So we've created a new comprehensive follow-up plan that works for both in-person and online. And I can't wait to share this incredible resource with you. And even better, it's all connected to the easy button on my speaker page in your conference workbook. So let's talk through this guest follow-up plan. There are 6 tools that make up our plan. So here's the first tool. Obviously, if you know anything about what I do for work, you know that I think texting is a great idea. You see, 26 billion text messages are being sent each and every day. Text messages have a 98% open rate. Email comes in second with closer to 20%. 90% of text messages are read within the first 3 minutes of being received. And most importantly, 45% of text messages get a response. So texting is a no-brainer, which is a great time for me to hype you about our first giveaway. We're giving away another iPhone. This will give you an incredible tool for texting all of your guests, and also just an awesome phone for you to have. So go ahead, pull out your phone right now and text LOVE to 816-484-3384. Again, just pull out your phone. You're gonna text the word LOVE, L-O-V-E, to 816-484-3384. 888-484-3384. And then you're going to get a text message back from us with a link in it. Go ahead, click that link, and then complete the digital connection card for your chance to win an iPhone 13. A theme we focus on a whole lot here at Texan Church is helping church leaders to make their members and their guests feel known, noticed, and loved. And this is one of the ways that we want you to feel known, noticed, and loved. And we hope this gift is a blessing to you and your ministry. Okay, let's get back on track. Texting isn't the only tool that makes an impact. Everyone has a different preferred method of communication. So it's important for us to reach all people using a variety of tools. So we recommend emailing, writing a handwritten letter, connecting with them on social media, making a personal phone call, even having a gift for them. Since people who visit your church for the very first time, they might be, and most likely are, out of the habit of coming to church. And so we need to be consistent in our communication. We need to help them to create a new routine. And so the way we do that is following up with them for at least 6 weeks after their first visit to your church. And following up for at least 6 weeks after their first visit helps your church to be in the front of their minds when they make their weekend plans. I know, 6 weeks seems like a lot, but listen to this story from Holly Howard.
Let me debunk the myth for you right now. It will not feel like a harassment to them. I'm going to read to you some quotes that we've had, people that this is what they've told us. I have never felt so loved. I have never had a pastor and his wife reach out to me personally, and so I thought, I have to go back to that church. You guys do a good job of reaching out. And here's the last one I want to share with you. I love getting those texts from Holly. I wish they wouldn't stop. It's nice to be remembered, loved, important, remembered, special. Isn't that the way our church should come across to people? Isn't that the way Jesus makes us feel?
Pretty incredible, right? Holly was terrified they would bother people, but instead, their guests were grateful to be noticed and remembered. Isn't that the feeling that we want our guests to have? Now, the easy button on my speaker page in your conference book will give you a complete schedule of messages, including the templates to send to your guests and reminder messages to send to your staff to connect with your new first-time guests. And in those first 2 weeks, you're communicating a lot. And this is intentional. The very first time someone attends church, there's more than an 80% likelihood that they will never come back. The odds are stacked against you. So if you can love on them, remind them of your church, and encourage them over and over for a few weeks, why wouldn't you? It's not like you're asking them to give money to your church. No. You're simply reaching out to say hello, to extend an invitation, or to be thoughtful. You hope that they create a routine of coming back to church, but the real goal is to build a relationship with them. So consider this. People aren't looking for a friendly church. They're looking for a friend at church. The dynamic of belonging and feeling welcomed is palpable and can relieve people's fears and vulnerabilities about your church. And once a guest has attended your church, whether that's online or in person for 3 or 4 weeks, then they don't need to be nurtured like a first-time guest. And honestly, they don't want to be. No one wants to feel like the new kid, right? So the sooner we can connect with them in a meaningful way, the quicker that trust is built and a new pattern is created where church becomes normal. And we aren't talking about integrating people into your church's body. We're simply talking about how to follow up with them in a way that's impactful and will keep them coming back. All right, so in your conference workbook, you'll see a calendar that represents all of the messages in our ultimate guest follow-up plan. And you'll also see 2 buttons. The orange easy button that I was talking about earlier, which imports all of those messages into your Texan Church account. And the green button is a corresponding PDF that outlines everything. When to send messages, a recommendation of what to say, what type of messages to send, everything. So feel free to use it, tweak it, however it can benefit you and your guests. However, if you're a Texan Church user, you can simply click that orange button, that easy button, and all of those follow-up messages will be loaded automatically into your Texan Church account. They'll be ready to send whenever guests are added into that group. It's simple and effective. Now, if you're not a Texan Church user, now would be a great time to try us out completely for free. You can take advantage of all of the templates. The Engage Conference Special gives you access to a Texan Church Pro membership completely free for 60 days. Okay, now that we've talked about the plan, let's talk about the last way, the 4th way to create consistency. That is to have a system. As you have listened to me talk through the robust follow-up plan, and as you look through the guides that we have for you, you should notice that it's comprehensive. So trying to attack it on your own and to keep track of each step for each guest, well, it could make your head spin. And worse than that, it could cause someone to be forgotten or overlooked. So don't do this all alone. Don't let anyone fall through the cracks. So here are a few tips for creating a good system around your guest follow-up plan. The first thing you can do is to create reminders. It's impossible for one person to remember all of this for each and every guest. So make lists, put your reminders on your calendar, set alarms on your phone, do whatever you need to do so that people don't fall through the cracks. And the second thing you can do is ask for help. Church leaders wear a lot of hats, too many if you ask me. So delegate some of this to other staff or a volunteer. Maybe there's someone in your congregation who loves data entry and they can enter all your information from your paper Connect cards into your database every week. Empower that person to use this passion of theirs to serve the church. Also, buy them a coffee and compliment them all the time because these people, they're a rare breed and you don't want to lose them. But perhaps some of these tasks can be divided amongst the ministry staff. For example, the children's director can handle all of the new families with kids, and the youth pastor can handle families with middle and high school kids. The music director can handle the 65 plus age group if you don't have a pastor dedicated to those folks, and so on. If you're a staff of 1 or 2, then lean into your volunteers and leadership. It's amazing what people can do when they're simply empowered. Good leadership seeks to multiply, so equip someone to take ownership over a piece of this. For example, who attends your church and is passionate about first-time guests? Now, maybe they wouldn't use those words to describe themselves, but they're always out in the foyer before and after services talking with people. They invite friends and family to go to church all the time. They're just energized by the interpersonal interactions. This is your hospitality person. Put them in charge of Sunday mornings in terms of greeters or hosting the people who have planned a visit from your website. This person could then create their own team of volunteers to help execute this well. And you can focus on preaching or kids ministry or whatever it is that you feel pulled away from. Delegation is a powerful tool for effective leaders, not a sign of weakness. So don't let your pride get in the way. Delegation is powerful. All right, the last thing you can do to create a good system around your guest follow-up plan is to pick and choose. Part of the reason I have you work through each of these strategies separately is so you don't try to take an all-in manual approach. Start with the most important strategy or 2 and work to perfect a system for those. And once you feel confident with that strategy and you know you can sustain it, work to add in another strategy. And if you do it all at once, then there's a good chance that none of it will be done thoroughly. And if this causes even one guest to fall through the cracks, then we have failed. So today I laid out 4 ways that you can create consistency in your guest follow-up plan, regardless of whether they're joining you online or in person. 1 was get obsessed with your guest. They are the future of your church. And 2 was to master your connection card and the call to action. Make sure your guests know why you need their contact information. And then 3 was utilize a comprehensive and a proven plan. Tens of thousands of church leaders have used the exact plan to connect with countless people in their church communities, and you can too. And the 4th is to create a system that works for you. Thanks so much and have a blessed day.